Have you ever met someone who seems truly at peace, not because life is easy, and not because nothing ever goes wrong, but because something about them feels different? They lose money, yet they stay calm. Others become angry. They answer with kindness. While the world lies awake with worry, they sleep peacefully. When you see someone like that, you can't help but wonder, what do they know that most of us don't? Most people believe happiness comes from better circumstances, a higher income, better health, the perfect relationship, a larger home, more freedom, more success. But history tells a very different story. Some of the happiest people who ever lived owned almost nothing. Epictetus was born a slave. Seneca was sent into exile. Marcus Aurelius ruled the greatest empire on earth while facing war, plague, betrayal, and heartbreaking loss. None of them lived an easy life. Yet, more than 2,000 years later, millions of people still turn to their words, especially when life becomes difficult. Why? Because they discovered something that many of us spent a lifetime searching for. Happiness isn't something you accidentally find. It's something you practice, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one habit at a time. Today, we'll explore 9 simple Stoic habits. Quiet habits, powerful habits, habits that can slowly transform the way you live, not overnight, but for a lifetime. And stay with me until the very end, because the final habit may completely change the way you see every day you have left. Let's begin. Habit 2. Stop arguing with reality. Imagine waking up one morning only to discover your flight has been canceled. Everything you planned falls apart. The hotel reservation is wasted. The meeting you prepared for is gone. In just a few seconds, your entire day changes. Now think about this. The cancellation lasted only a moment, just one notification, just one sentence. But for many people, the suffering lasts much longer, not because of what happened, but because they keep replaying it again and again, wishing reality had chosen differently. Epictetus believed this is where unnecessary suffering begins, not with the event itself, but with our refusal to accept that it has already happened. He said we often fight battles that are already over. Reality has made its decision, yet the mind keeps arguing. This shouldn't have happened. This isn't fair. They had no right to treat me that way. The conversation never ends. But notice something. None of those thoughts change reality. They don't rewrite the past. They only drain your peace. It's like trying to negotiate with yesterday. No matter how convincing your argument is, the past never changes its answer. The happiest people understand this. They don't waste precious energy fighting facts they cannot change. Instead, they ask a different question. Now that this has happened, what is the wisest thing I can do next? That single question changes everything. It shifts your attention away from resistance and toward responsibility. This is why Stoic acceptance is never weakness. Acceptance doesn't mean liking what happened. It simply means seeing reality as it is. Only when you stop arguing with reality can you respond wisely. Only then can you move forward. Imagine 2 sailors caught in the same violent storm. The first spend the night shouting at the wind. The second quietly adjusts the sails. Neither one controls the storm. Neither one changes a wind, but only one reaches the shore. Life works the same way. You can't always choose what happens to you, but you can always choose how you respond. And sometimes that choice changes everything. Habit 3, protect your inner world. There's a question almost nobody asks anymore. Who is training your mind? Every single day, your attention is being pulled. News competes for your outrage. Social media competes for comparison. Advertisements compete for your desire. And other people's opinions compete for your identity. Without even noticing, many people spend more time checking notifications than examining their own thoughts. The Stoics recognized this danger long before smartphones existed. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that the mind becomes what it repeatedly consumes, not because the world forces you to think a certain way, but because attention quietly shapes character. Think about it. If you spend an hour every day feeding your mind with anger, anger slowly begins to feel normal. If fear is the first thing you consume every morning, before long, the whole world starts to feel dangerous, even when it isn't. If every conversation is filled with complaints, complaining slowly becomes your natural way of thinking. Your mind is like fertile soil. It doesn't care whether you're planting flowers or weeds. It simply grows whatever you keep feeding it. That's why the happiest people protect their inner world just as carefully as others protect their money. They don't ignore bad news because they're naive. They simply refuse to let negativity live rent-free inside their minds. Instead, they choose to feed their minds with better things. A few pages of a good book, a thoughtful conversation, a quiet walk, a journal, a few moments of complete silence, small choices, repeated every day until peace becomes your default state. If you've made it this far, I'd love to ask you something. Which of these habits is harder for you? Accepting reality or protecting your own mind? Leave your answer in the comments below. I genuinely enjoy reading them. It's always fascinating to see how people from different backgrounds experience these timeless Stoic ideas. Now, let's continue. Habit 4. Review yourself before you judge the world. Most people end the day the same way. They scroll. They watch another episode. They keep distracting themselves until sleep finally takes over. Very few people spend even 5 quiet minutes asking the only person they can truly improve, themselves. Nearly 2,000 years ago, Seneca practiced a remarkably simple habit. Every night, before going to sleep, he asked himself a few honest questions. What did I do well today? Where did I lose control? What can I do better tomorrow? Notice what he wasn't doing. He wasn't criticizing himself. He wasn't drowning in guilt. And he certainly wasn't reliving every mistake just to feel worse. He was simply gathering information, learning, improving, one day at a time. Imagine a ship's captain returning from a long voyage. Before sailing again, he studies the map. He notes where the winds changed, where the currents became dangerous, and where the ship drifted off course. Not because he regrets the journey, but because he wants the next one to be better. Your life deserves the same kind of attention. Every difficult conversation, every emotional reaction, every poor decision, none of them prove that you're failing. They're feedback. Nothing more, nothing less. Most people repeat the same mistakes for years, not because they can't change, but because they never stop long enough to notice the pattern. The Stoics understood that awareness always comes before improvement. You cannot change what you refuse to examine, and you cannot grow without honest reflection. Just 5 quiet minutes at the end of each day can teach you more about yourself than an entire day spent blaming the world. Habit 5. Practice difficulty before life chooses it for you. Here's an uncomfortable question. What happens when comfort disappears? Most people don't find out until life forces them to. A job is gone. A relationship ends. Money becomes tight. Health suddenly changes. Only then do they begin learning how to be resilient. The Stoics chose a different path. They practiced before the crisis arrived. Seneca would sometimes eat simple food, wear rough clothing, sleep on the floor, not because he enjoyed discomfort, but because he wanted to remember something deeply liberating. If I can choose this today, then I can survive it. If life ever chooses it for me. Think about firefighters. They don't wait for a building to catch fire before learning how to rescue people. Athletes don't prepare after the championship begins. They train long before the pressure arrives. Life follows the very same rule. Every small challenge you willingly accept today makes tomorrow's crisis a little less frightening. Take a cold shower. Walk instead of driving. Put your phone away for 1 hour. Finish the hard work before the easy entertainment. Small choices, almost invisible, yet each one sends the same message to your mind. I am stronger than my comfort. Over time, comfort stops controlling you, and something better quietly takes its place. Freedom. By now, you may have noticed something. None of these habits promise a perfect life. They don't remove problems. They don't guarantee success. Instead, they slowly transform the person who faces those problems. And that changes everything, because the quality of your life is rarely determined by what happens to you. It's determined by the person you become while it's happening. Habit 6. Be ruthless about who shapes your mind. Take a moment and think about the 5 people you spend the most time with, not just your closest friends. Think about the voices you hear every day, the podcasts you listen to, the creators you follow, the co-workers you eat lunch with, the family members whose opinions echo in your mind long after the conversation ends. Now ask yourself one uncomfortable question. Are these people pulling you upward or quietly teaching you to settle? Seneca believed that character is contagious, not because people force us to become like them, but because the human mind is designed to imitate. Spend enough time around people who complain, and complaining begins to sound reasonable. Spend enough time around people who gossip, and eventually silence feels strange. Spend enough time around people who constantly blame the economy, politics, their parents, their boss, or bad luck, and without realizing it, you begin outsourcing responsibility for your own life. This happens slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. No one wakes up one morning and decides to lower their standards. It happens one conversation at a time, one joke, one excuse, one compromise, until mediocrity feels completely normal. The Stoics treated friendships differently. They didn't ask, who makes me feel comfortable? They asked, who makes me better? The people worth keeping close are not always the ones who agree with you. They're the ones who challenge you, who tell you the truth when it's uncomfortable, who celebrate your growth instead of feeling threatened by it. And just as importantly, become that person for someone else, because wisdom grows stronger the moment it is shared. Habit 7. Spend time with minds greater than your own. One of the greatest advantages you have today would have seemed impossible to Marcus Aurelius. At any moment, you can sit down with the greatest minds in human history, not physically, but intellectually. Every time you open a meaningful book, you begin a conversation across centuries. You hear Seneca explain suffering, Epictetus explain freedom, Marcus Aurelius explain responsibility. The strange thing is, most people carry an entire library inside their phone, yet spend hours consuming content they'll forget tomorrow. The Stoics believed your mind becomes whatever repeatedly enters it, so choose carefully. Reading wasn't about collecting information. It was about refining judgment. Imagine trying to build a cathedral using warped blueprints. No matter how hard you work, the structure will eventually collapse. Your beliefs work the same way. If your thinking is weak, your decisions become weak. If your thinking is wise, your entire life slowly begins reflecting that wisdom. Even 10 pages each day, one thoughtful lecture, a single chapter before bed, can quietly reshape the way you see yourself and the world. You don't need to read hundreds of books every year. You simply need to revisit ideas that deserve a lifetime of practice, because knowledge only becomes wisdom when it changes the way you live. Up to this point, every habit we've explored has focused on strengthening your inner world, but there are still 2 practices the Stoics considered essential. One teaches you how to find joy in ordinary life. The other teaches you why every ordinary day is far more valuable than you realize. And together, They may be the closest thing the Stoics ever discovered to lasting happiness. Habit 8. Train yourself to notice what most people ignore. Pause for a moment. Think about yesterday. Not the biggest event. Not the most stressful moment. Just yesterday. Now ask yourself, what was beautiful about it? Most people struggle to answer, not because nothing good happened, but because their minds were looking somewhere else. Psychologists call this the negativity bias. Long before science gave it a name, the Stoics were already training against it. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself not to overlook ordinary blessings simply because they happen every day. A warm meal, a healthy body, a quiet evening, a conversation with someone who truly listened. These moments rarely make headlines, yet they quietly become the foundation of a meaningful life. Many people misunderstand gratitude. They think gratitude means pretending everything is perfect. The Stoics never believed that. They never asked us to deny pain. They simply refused to let pain become the only thing they noticed. Imagine two people walking through the same garden. One notices every dying leaf. The other sees flowers just beginning to bloom. Neither person is wrong. They're standing in the same place. They're simply training different eyes. Your attention works the same way. Whatever you repeatedly notice slowly becomes your reality. That's why the happiest people don't wait for life to become perfect. They practice gratitude first, and because of that, they begin seeing beauty that everyone else walks right past. Tonight, before you go to sleep, write down 3 specific moments from your day, not something general, like, I'm grateful for my family. Be specific. I'm grateful my daughter laughed during dinner. I'm grateful a stranger held the door. I'm grateful my friend called just to check on me. Specific gratitude changes perception, and perception quietly changes life. Habit 9. Remember that your time is limited. Imagine someone whispering one sentence into your ear every single morning. One day, this will be your last sunrise. Most people push that thought away. It feels uncomfortable, too dark, too heavy. The Stoics saw it differently. To them, remembering death wasn't depressing. It was freeing. They called it Memento Mori. Remember that you must die. Marcus Aurelius returned to this idea again and again, not because he feared death, but because he feared wasting life. Think about how many things steal your peace every single week. Arguments online, a rude comment, traffic, someone forgetting to reply. Now ask yourself, would any of that matter if you truly believed your time was limited? Probably not. Death has a remarkable way of simplifying life. It strips away the ego. It reveals what truly matters. The conversation you've been avoiding, the apology you've been too proud to make, the dream you've postponed for years, the people you assumed would always be there. Most of us live as if life owes us another decade, another year, another tomorrow. But life has never made that promise. The Stoics didn't meditate on death to become afraid. They reflected on death so they could finally learn how to live, a story Marcus Aurelius never intended to tell. Near the end of his reign, Marcus Aurelius received devastating news. One of his most trusted generals had betrayed him and declared himself the new emperor. Imagine that moment. Years of loyalty gone. Most rulers would have answered with revenge. History tells us Marcus chose something different. He hoped he could forgive a man instead of destroying him. Before they ever met, the rebellion collapsed. When the rebels' severed head was presented as a trophy, Marcus refused to celebrate. Instead, he ordered that it be buried with dignity. Why? Because revenge had never been his greatest victory. His greatest victory was always mastering himself. That is the quiet power of Stoicism. It doesn't promise you'll never be betrayed. It doesn't promise life will always be fair. It promises something greater, that whatever life places in front of you, you remain the author of your character. And that is a freedom no one can ever take away. Perhaps that's why these teachings have survived for more than 2,000 years, not because they belong to ancient Rome, but because they belong to human nature. Technology has changed. Empires have risen and fallen. Entire civilizations have disappeared. Yet people still struggle with fear, still wrestle with anger, still search for happiness where it has never lived. The Stoics quietly remind us that peace is rarely found. It is practiced one habit at a time, one ordinary morning, one difficult conversation, one better decision, repeated again and again until the person you once hoped to become simply becomes who you are. Don't try to master all 9 habits. Tomorrow, choose one. Practice it for the next 7 days. Then notice what changes, because lasting transformation rarely comes through dramatic moments. It grows through small decisions made consistently. If this video gave you a new way of looking at your life, I truly appreciate your support. A simple like helps this message reach more people who may need it. And if you enjoy practical Stoic wisdom applied to everyday life, consider subscribing. Every week, we explore timeless ideas that can help you build a calmer, stronger, and more resilient mind. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these 9 Stoic habits would make the biggest difference in your life? And which one will you begin practicing today? I'll be reading every comment, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Until next time, take care of your mind, protect your character, and remember, a peaceful life isn't found by accident. It's built one habit at a time.